Well, SABC News reporter Mashako Komani has more on this story. Let's cross live to her now. Mashako, here we are talking about the issue of the schools having to be closed now. In anticipation, the health minister had warned that we're going to come to the peak season, but there were those who insisted that the schools should reopen. Shall we say now that it's finally, they finally came to their senses?
Well, Colin, good afternoon to you and the viewers at home. SADTU is just a teachers' union. The decision at the end of the day whether schools will be closed rests with the Minister of Basic Education, Ms. Angie Motshekga, and it will be her that must then, pave the way and say what is it that must happen. But obviously, with SADTU being the majority in terms of unionized teachers, they, I suppose, have some sort of sway, because if they do tell their members to stay at home, a lot of schooling will not take place in this particular season, or in schools as a whole. So I think like they did say that they were going to engage the minister going forward, but I know that they are not the only ones that have said that they were going to engage the minister on similar issues of that schools should be closed, especially during now that we are at peak season. But COSAS as well had said that when we last spoke to them, that also engaging the minister in terms of making sure that schools close now during the peak seasons and only will be open for grade 12s. They also were, I think, the first to suggest that let grade 12s be taken to camps so that they are in a controlled environment, because you may be COVID negative today and go home, and tomorrow things may have changed. So we'll just have to wait and see what is it that is going to happen, and what will the word or the engagements be with the Department of Basic Education.
So the sentiment of parents regarding their children going to school, we had seen some of them saying that I would rather have my child stay at home and have a gap year than to have a corpse returning to me in the interim.
Yes, I think, a lot of parents have, given that sentiment. But there are some parents that are also saying that we can't be in hiding forever. But indeed, some parents saying that they would rather forfeit this academic year for the next. But there were also other ideas that were thrown around, which were the issues of reorganizing the school calendar, or redrawing the schooling calendar, just to ensure that perhaps schools could start in September, like other countries would have that. Others obviously saying they want to follow what other countries have done, saying that the schooling will once again begin in the year 2021. But I think it will be quite interesting to see. But also I think what the union had said when they explained the issue of closing down schools now, was saying that let us close now, because it's really hectic in terms of what's going on in the ground, and looking at the numbers that are going up every day. Then perhaps once we feel that we are away from the peak season, we may reopen and continue with teaching, and perhaps push examinations or assessments of sorts into that December month. So I think there's many different options that are available. But at the end of the day, the custodian of education in this country does remain remains Minister Angie Motshekga, and it will be her that will have to forge the way forward and say, is she going to accede to these demands or suggestions by SADTU and COSAS that let schools close, because there is no teaching that's happening. That is one of the reasons that they're putting forward, saying that educators are, some are going into isolation, some are testing positive for the virus, as well as anxiety from parents. That I think West Rand was one of the schools that they mentioned that there was really low attendance there in terms of learners going to school because of parents keeping them away. Because you'll also remember, I suppose, as a parent, when you're sitting at home every day and you're looking at these numbers going up, and also we also heard those reports, I think 7 learners, they having perished they've lost their life to this disease. So it's going to be really interesting to see what is it that happens in terms of the response from Department of Basic Education. Are they going to see to this pressure? Are they going to find each other? Are they going to find some sort of middle ground? We'll watch and we'll wait and see what is it exactly that takes place, Colin.
Yeah, well, Perhaps this resolution may resonate with the Department of Education, but listening to the deliberations regarding how to continue with the education process with the media, especially radio and television programming, one wonders how they're going to cover ground for most of the grades and how television and radio programming may be in line with education programs throughout the day or at the times that are convenient for teaching and learning, besides regular programming that has been planned for throughout the months that are going to be subsequent.
Yes, I think it's going to be, I think in an ideal world, children sit down and they do what they're told and they learn. But we'll also remember that in terms of online, a lot of schools coming out saying that they weren't recording, they were recording low attendance level for various reasons. Perhaps it could be the issues of data. But they also spoke about radio. But also the question then it becomes a juggling act. They cited the public broadcaster saying that, the department should work with the SABC because they do have the numbers and they do have that reach in terms of what they are able to the audiences that they are able to reach when it comes to radio. I think that was one of the suggestions when the issue of data was asked. There's also television, but quite correctly, you start to look at grade R all the way up to grade 11 or grade 12. How are they going to fit that in, in terms of their programming, and how would that work? And I think in an ideal world, it's great. This could possibly happen. But I did hear the Deputy Secretary of SADTU saying that, the focus for them at this particular moment would be grade 12s. So I'm assuming that in terms of that online, that radio, that television, in terms of churning out program would apply to grade 12s, and for the other grades they would have to then, I suppose, wait and see and wait out this wave of the pandemic as we're experiencing it in the country. But I think it's really going to be quite interesting if they do succeed in their demands and the suggestions that they're making. How exactly will this be how is it exactly supposed to turn out? How will it work in terms of like I did say that online has not necessarily been overly successful. Data, we live in a country where data is very expensive. Some parents now having to decide, are we buying data, are we buying food? We've done a story about a similar type of situation. Would remember that the majority of learners in South Africa don't come from privileged homes where, data, a huge amount of data is part of the daily budget. How is it going to work? And I think I think the minister will also be faced with a situation whereby we know that in private schools, most of them have gone back in their full numbers. They've been able to plan themselves and plan that out, and teaching has taken place. That are we then going to sacrifice the academic year at the expense of a lot of South African children, and also go forward and increase the disparities that exist in terms of the haves and the have-nots. So it's really, I think, going to be very interesting. But at the end of the day, the decision then would have to be made. Guti, are we saving now this academic year at the expense of lives, or are we saving lives at the expense of the academic year? Or will there be a middle ground that is reached in terms of what happens to school children going forward?
Mashaku Komanu there giving us the synopsis of the SADTU NEC's resolution that schools should close until after the COVID-19 peak.